Hello everyone, today we will talk about, from a Chinese perspective, what form will the decisive battle between China and the United States take? First of all, the Chinese have not yet formed a unified definition and standard on how to define a decisive battle between China and the United States and what form the decisive battle will take. The criteria for the showdown between China and the United States, and when will the final showdown take place? This topic has been a long-term hot topic among Chinese people, because there is no unified definition and standard. So this question often has different answers. My point of view is that the struggle between China and the United States may last for decades, but the final battle may not be judged by history until the final result appears, because so far, China and the United States have never stopped fighting in various forms. In any war, the outcome may have decisive consequences. However, no matter what kind of war, there are actually two basic forms. First, traditional forms of military warfare. In the current world situation, it is unlikely to become a decisive battle. Because, first of all, China and the United States were both participants in World War II. They also had conflicts with North Korea and Vietnam, and they are countries with nuclear weapons that can hurt each other. Once a military war breaks out directly, how to control the war borders will be a difficult problem for both China and the United States. Once a military war of such two scales starts, it will be difficult to end in a short time, and the scope of the impact cannot be controlled. The vested interest groups in the two countries will definitely try their best to avoid it happening under normal circumstances. However, from a Chinese perspective, some people have always believed that there is a possibility that some politicians in the United States will make all mankind pay for their own interests. Secondly, the current debt burden and military strength of the United States do not support the United States launching a comprehensive and large-scale military war with another major country. In addition, the United States must be careful about Japan. Japan is an extremely ambitious and resilient country. The Chinese have long realized that once the war between China and the United States reaches a certain stage, Japan may not be willing to be the watchdog of the United States as it is now. What's more, there is a blood feud between Japan and the United States, and the same countries include Europe. Those countries. Finally, the relative advantage of the United States military strength is no longer obvious. In about 5 years, it will definitely be difficult for the United States to defeat China near the first island chain. And once the war between the two major powers falls into a protracted war, the winner will definitely be the more powerful one. The Chinese are a resilient nation. There is no doubt that the Chinese have the advantage in this regard. The answer is obvious if we look at history. Second, the economic war between China and the United States. Since the color revolution in the United States was blocked in China, the main battlefield between China and the United States has been concentrated in the economic field. The main battlefield of the economy is manufacturing, and the main battlefield of manufacturing is chips and semiconductors. President Trump officially provoked the economic dispute between China and the United States in 2018. From the trade war to the technology war, we hope to eliminate China's influence through the restructuring of the global supply chain. Political demands are the concentrated expression of competition for economic interests, and war provides political support. Economic interests are the basis of competition. The ultimate goal of all forms of struggle is to compete for economic interests. The American media has been promoting the China threat theory for the sake of political correctness, advocating that China is a powerful opponent that the United States has never encountered since the founding of the country. In this public opinion environment, more and more Americans believe this view. But it is difficult to say whether this view is correct. Why? If we only talk about China's hard power, in fact, China will not be a rival to the United States for many years in the future. Many people in China agree with this view. However, the difference is that this time the United States is facing Eastern wisdom and Chinese civilization. If you are familiar with the history of various dynasties in Chinese history, you will know that in many cases, the outcome of wars between countries does not entirely depend on hard power. Many times it is not fought by soldiers, but the preferred way of fighting between Western countries is direct war. Therefore, if the factor of Eastern wisdom is added, it is difficult for American politicians to determine whether they can defeat China when their hard power is absolutely dominant. To put it simply, the United States is very strong but China is very cunning. The outcome is unpredictable, but it is always right to list China as the strongest opponent of the United States since its founding. Therefore, the ongoing economic war will basically determine the outcome of the game between China and the United States. The United States has launched so many economic wars, and it can be said that it has launched almost everything it can. The United States is still continuing to raise interest rates, and one of its important purposes is to detonate China's financial problems, thus completing the harvest of China's economic achievements of more than 10 years. As the United States is a veteran player in economic warfare, China has actually been suffering losses. But since China went through a particularly dangerous 2015, from the top level of the country to the private sector, attention has been paid to financial systemic risks. After actually halting the free convertibility of the RMB and rebuilding the financial firewall, it is difficult for U.S. economic means to have a decisive effect on China's economy. China's foreign exchange reserves decreased by nearly $1 trillion in 2015. In the same year, a serious stock market crisis broke out in China. Finally, the powerful state organs passed administrative orders combating illegal and criminal activities in the securities and futures fields. The forces that are shorting China's financial sector have just begun to converge. At that time, the United States did have a good opportunity to harvest China's wealth, but it failed in the end. Because at that time, in the name of promoting the internationalization of the RMB, we made a fuss about the free convertibility of the RMB and dismantled the financial firewall. To put it simply, at that time, China withdrew its goalkeeper before it had the ability to penetrate the opponent's penalty area, and directly competed with the US dollar. This is a very dangerous situation for China. It is very likely that before the RMB has been internationalized, China's own financial system was defeated by the United States. Once you lose the financial war, you will lose half your life. Examples of countries in Latin America, Japan, Russia, and Southeast Asia. Once the United States harvests their economic success, they will experience economic depression or stagnation for at least 20 years. China's accumulation of more than 10 years has been plundered by the United States. Advantageous core assets were acquired cheaply by American capital, and the economic lifeline was also controlled by the United States. China will likely lose the opportunity to challenge the United States. But today in 2023, it is difficult for the United States financial war and economy to work. In China at that time, many people did not pay much attention to and understand financial issues. Finance has become a small circle and seems to have a high technical threshold. In fact, the basic logic of financial warfare is not that complicated. Fortunately, China's top leaders began to realize the dangers of financial risks. Since then, in order to prevent financial systemic risks, the Chinese government has strengthened its leadership in the financial sector. This is very important because the United States and Western countries have always advocated market economy and free market and even brainwashed the people of other countries through education. Therefore, some people in China strongly advocate learning from the Federal Reserve to independently control monetary policy without being restricted by government leadership. After 2017, China's financial sector finally passed its most critical moment, and the United States also lost its best opportunity. As I said at the beginning of the video, China and the United States are like two masters competing in martial arts. Any move may kill the other party, so it is understandable why the United States emphasizes China's threat in all aspects.